She tried to warn them. They laughed in her face. Now the forest itself is hunting them. Lena Virel knew the truth before the blood touched snow, before the screams, before the ancient alpha emerged from shadows older than memory itself. In a pack where strength meant fists and fangs, her quiet warnings were treated like dust. But when she locked eyes with something massive and scarred in the northern dark, everything shattered. They cast her out for speaking. He came for her anyway. And what happened next didn't just break her world. It rebuilt it entirely. Stay until the end. You won't believe how this ends. Like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. The thing about being invisible was that Lena had gotten good at it. Not invisible in the way that mattered. Wolves could always smell you, always sense the flicker of your pulse beneath your skin, but invisible in the way that counted in the Ashford pack. When you were Omega, when your frame was slight and your voice soft, when you didn't throw your weight around or snarl for dominance, you became background. Furniture. A shadow that served food and cleaned dens and kept her mouth shut. Lena had accepted that a long time ago. What she hadn't accepted, what burned low and constant in her chest like embers that refused to die, was being wrong when she was right. The great hall of the Ashford Den was chaos that night, as it always was before a hunt. Alphas and betas crowded the long wooden tables, fists slamming down, voices rising in drunken challenges. The fire roared in the stone hearth, throwing wild shadows against the walls. Somewhere in the back, a female beta laughed too loud, and a younger alpha shoved another hard enough that a bench tipped over. Lena moved through it all like water. She refilled cups. She carried platters of meat. She kept her eyes down and her breathing even, and she tried so hard to ignore the feeling crawling up her spine like frost. Something was wrong. It had started 2 days ago. A pressure in the air, subtle but building. The birds had gone quiet in the northern stretch of forest. The deer trails, usually worn and busy this time of year, had emptied. Even the wind tasted different, sharp, electric, like the moment before lightning struck. Lena had noticed. No one else had. More ale, Omega. She turned. Garrett, one of the younger alphas, was holding up his cup without looking at her. His attention was on Ronan, the pack alpha, who stood at the head of the table with his arms crossed and a grin that showed too many teeth. Lena poured the ale silently. Her hands didn't shake. They never did. "We leave at dawn," Ronan announced, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "The northern boundary's been quiet too long. Time to remind anything out there who owns these woods." Cheers erupted. Fists pounded the table. Lena's stomach twisted. She set the pitcher down carefully and stepped back, but the pressure in her chest was building now, insistent. The kind of feeling that made her wolf pace restlessly under her skin, hackles raised. "Alpha Ronan." Her voice was quiet. Too quiet. It got swallowed by the noise. She tried again. "Alpha." This time a few heads turned. The hall didn't go silent. It never did for her. But Ronan's gaze slid her way, irritation flickering across his face. "What?" Lena's throat felt tight, but she forced the words out. "The Northern Territory. I don't think we should—" "You don't think?" Garrett cut in with a snort. "Since when do Omegas think?" Laughter rippled through the nearby wolves. Not cruel exactly, just dismissive. The kind of laughter that said she wasn't worth the effort of real cruelty. Lena's jaw tightened, but she kept her gaze on Ronan. Something's wrong out there. The forest is too quiet. No prey, no birds. It feels, Ronan repeated, drawing the word out like it was a joke. He leaned back against the table, arms still crossed, eyes hard. "You want me to call off a hunt because of a feeling? It's not just—" "Do you know what it costs to look weak?" Ronan's voice dropped, and the laughter died. The hall went quieter now, wolves turning to watch. "Do you have any idea what happens when a pack shows fear? When an alpha listens to some nervous Omega whispering about bad feelings?" Heat crawled up Lena's neck, but she didn't back down. "Not yet. I'm not asking you to show fear. I'm asking you to be cautious. Just wait a few days. Scout it first." "I don't need a scout," Ronan said flatly. "I need wolves who trust their alpha's judgment, and I sure as hell don't need some scared little Omega telling me how to run my pack." The words hit like a slap. Lena stood there, frozen, while the hall filled with murmurs and low chuckles. Garrett was grinning. A few of the betas wouldn't meet her eyes. Go back to the kitchens, Ronan said, already turning away, and stay out of pack business. She should have left. She should have ducked her head and walked away and let it go, the way she always did. But the pressure in her chest was suffocating now, and the image that kept flashing through her mind, dark eyes, massive shape, something waiting, wouldn't stop. People are going to get hurt. The hall went dead silent. Ronan turned back slowly, and this time there was no irritation in his face, just cold, hard anger. What did you say? Lena's pulse hammered, but she met his gaze. If we go into the northern woods tomorrow, people are going to get hurt. I can feel it. Please, just... You can feel it, Ronan repeated, voice dangerously soft. He took a step toward her, then another. You think you know better than me. Better than every wolf in this room. I didn't say that. You think you're special. He was close now, towering over her, and Lena's wolf was screaming at her to submit, to drop her gaze, to run. You think because you're sensitive and scared all the time, that makes you smart. It doesn't. It makes you weak. Alpha, I'm not trying to... You're trying to undermine me. His voice rose, filling the hall. In front of my pack. You're trying to make me look like a fool. I'm trying to keep people safe. The backhand came so fast she didn't see it. Pain exploded across her face. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of a table, her vision swimming. Blood filled her mouth. She'd bitten her tongue. The hall was silent. Ronan stared down at her, breathing hard, his hand still raised. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or surprise at his own violence. But it vanished as quickly as it came. If you ever, he said quietly, question me in front of my wolves again, I will have you removed from this pack. Do you understand? Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. Her face was on fire, her ears ringing. I said, do you understand? She forced herself upright, forced herself to meet his gaze one last time, even though her wolf was cowering and her hands were shaking. Yes, Alpha. Ronan held her gaze for another long moment, then turned away. We hunt at dawn, he announced. All of you, no exceptions. The hall erupted again, cheers, shouts, the scrape of benches as wolves stood and clapped each other on the back. Lena stood there, blood on her lip, and felt the world tilt sideways. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small room at the edge of the den, barely more than a closet, really, with a narrow cot and a single window, and pressed a cold cloth to her swelling cheek. Her wolf was restless, pacing, growling low in her chest. They're making a mistake. Lena knew it the way she knew the shape of the moon, the way she knew the difference between a summer storm and a winter one. It was instinct, bone deep and undeniable. But instinct didn't matter here. Strength mattered. Dominance mattered. And she had neither. When the sky started to lighten, she heard the pack gathering in the courtyard below. Boots on stone, voices low and eager. The jingle of knives being strapped on. The scrape of claws against dirt as wolves stretched and shifted. Lena stood and looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror above her wash basin. Her cheek was purple. Her lip was split. Her eyes looked too big in her thin face, too dark. She looked like what she was, powerless. But when the call came, Ronan's voice, rough and commanding, she pulled on her boots anyway. She didn't have a choice. Omegas followed. That's what they did. The northern forest was beautiful in the early morning light. Frost clung to the branches, turning the trees into sculptures of glass and silver. The sky was pale pink, streaked with gold, and the air was so cold it burned Lena's lungs with every breath. 20 wolves moved through the woods in a loose formation. Ronan led, of course, flanked by his strongest betas. The rest spread out behind, some in human form, some shifted and loping on 4 legs. Lena stayed at the back. No one spoke to her. No one looked at her. She was a ghost again, tolerated but not acknowledged. She told herself it didn't matter, but the pressure in her chest was worse now, crushing. Her wolf wouldn't stop growling, a constant low rumble of warning that made her teeth ache. They were an hour into the woods when the silence registered. Not the silence of the pack. They were loud, careless, snapping branches and laughing, but the silence of the forest itself. No birds, no rustle of prey in the underbrush. No wind. Lena slowed, her gaze sweeping the trees. The frost looked wrong here, too thick, too sharp. The shadows between the trunks seemed deeper than they should be. "Ronan," one of the betas called from up ahead. "Tracks!" The pack converged. Lena stayed back, but she could see them from where she stood. Massive prints in the snow, clawed and deliberate. Wolf tracks, but bigger than any wolf she'd ever seen. "Fresh," Ronan said, crouching. He sounded pleased. "Whatever it is, it's close." "Could be a rogue," Garrett offered. "Or a challenge," another beta said, grinning. Ronan straightened, his gaze sweeping the trees. "Spread out, find it. Whatever it is, we take it down." The pack moved instantly, fanning out into the forest with the easy confidence of wolves who'd never lost a fight. Lena didn't move. Her wolf was screaming now, clawing at her insides, begging her to run. She turned slowly, scanning the trees behind her. And that's when she saw them. Eyes, massive, golden, watching from the shadows 50 feet away. Her breath stopped. The shape didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there in the dark between the trees, huge and impossibly still, and stared directly at her. Not at the pack, at her. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. She opened her mouth to shout a warning, and the forest exploded. It happened so fast. A howl, deep and ancient, tore through the trees. Wolves burst from the shadows, not rogues, not random strays, but organized. A hunting party, bigger, faster, and moving with the kind of brutal precision that spoke of training. The Ashford wolves scattered, shouting, shifting mid-run. Lena was thrown to the ground as a massive gray wolf barreled past her, snarling. She rolled, scrambling to her feet, and saw Ronan in his shifted form, teeth bared, facing down a black wolf twice his size. Chaos. Blood. The crack of bones shifting, the wet sound of claws tearing into fur. Lena's wolf surged, desperate to shift, desperate to fight. But she forced it down. She wasn't a fighter. She'd never been a fighter. Instead, she ran. Not away from the fight, toward it. "Fall back!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Ronan, fall back!" No one listened. She grabbed the nearest beta, Marcus, bleeding from a gash on his shoulder, and dragged him behind a tree. "We can't win this," she gasped. "We need to retreat." "We don't retreat," Marcus snarled, shoving her off. And then she saw him again, the Alpha. He stepped out of the shadows like something carved from stone and nightmare. Bigger than any wolf she'd ever seen, his fur black and silver-streaked, his body covered in scars that spoke of 100 battles won. His eyes, those golden eyes, locked onto hers again. And this time he didn't look away. Lena froze. The fight raged around them, but in that moment, it was just the two of them. The rest of the world blurred. She felt it then. A pull, sharp and undeniable, like a hook lodged in her chest. No. Not possible. But the Alpha's gaze didn't waver, didn't soften. It burned. And then Ronan was there, slamming into the Black Alpha with a roar, and the moment shattered. Lena stumbled backward, her mind reeling. She tried to warn them. She tried to tell Garrett, tried to pull another beta back, tried to scream at Ronan to stop, to see, but the only thing she got was Garrett's snarl in her face. "This is your fault." She stared at him, blood roaring in her ears. "You brought this," he spat. "You and your warnings, your bad luck, you're a curse. I didn't... Get out!" The words hit like a second slap. "Garrett, get out!" he roared and shoved her hard. Lena hit the ground, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. When she looked up, half the pack was staring at her. Not with anger, with agreement. "She tried to sabotage us," someone muttered. "Probably signaled them somehow." Omega trash. Ronan, bleeding and limping, looked at her with something worse than anger, disgust. "Go," he said quietly. Lena's world tilted. "Alpha, please." "I said go." His voice was flat, final. "You're not Ashford anymore." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense, but the pack was already turning away, already dismissing her. And the Black Alpha, the massive, scarred wolf who'd been staring at her like she was the only thing that mattered, was gone. Lena stood on shaking legs, and then she ran. What? She made it a mile before she collapsed. The cold was brutal. Her coat wasn't thick enough, and she'd left without supplies, without a plan, without anything except the clothes on her back and the splitting pain in her chest. Exiled. Cast out. packless. The word was a death sentence in the wild. Lena curled into herself at the base of a tree, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Her cheek throbbed, her ribs ached where Garrett had shoved her. And her wolf was howling, a sound of pure grief that echoed through her bones. She'd tried to save them, and they'd thrown her away. Lena closed her eyes and felt the first sting of tears freeze on her lashes. The storm was coming. She could feel it in the air, heavy and vicious. She was going to die out here, alone, forgotten. She almost laughed at the bitter irony of it. But then the wind shifted, and she smelled him. Lena's eyes snapped open. The black alpha stepped out of the trees, massive and silent, his golden eyes glowing in the dim light. He was in human form now, tall, broad-shouldered, his face all sharp lines and old scars. His clothes were dark, practical, and he moved with the kind of dangerous grace that made her wolf freeze mid-growl. He stopped 10 feet away, stared down at her. Lena's breath came in short, shallow gasps. "You," she whispered. The alpha's gaze didn't waver. "Me," he agreed. His voice was low, rough, like gravel and smoke, and then he knelt in the snow in front of her, his expression unreadable. "What's your name?" She shouldn't answer, shouldn't trust him. He was the enemy, the reason her pack, former pack. The correction hit like a blade. "Lena," she whispered. The alpha nodded slowly, as if her name was important, as if it mattered. "I'm Kyle," he said quietly. And then, impossibly, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her bruised face. Lena flinched, but he didn't pull away. "They hurt you." It wasn't a question. Lena's throat closed up. Kale's jaw tightened. For a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes, something that promised violence and ruin. But when he spoke again, his voice was soft. "Come with me." Lena stared at him. You'll die out here." His gaze swept over her, taking in her thin coat, her bleeding lip, the way she was shaking. "The storm's coming. You won't last an hour." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can." Kale's gaze locked onto hers, and the force of it stole her breath. "You warned them. They didn't listen. Now you're alone, and they left you to freeze. But you don't have to die for their stupidity." "Why do you care?" The question came out sharper than she meant it to. Kale's expression shifted, something raw and almost vulnerable crossing his face before he locked it down. "Because you're mine," he said simply. Lena's heart stopped. "What?" "You felt it." Kale's voice was quiet, but there was an edge of certainty in it that left no room for argument. "When you looked at me, you felt it." She had. Oh God, she had. "No," Lena whispered, shaking her head. I'm not asking you to accept it." Kale stood, offering her his hand. "I'm asking you to live. Come with me. Let me get you somewhere warm, and then you can decide." Lena stared at his outstretched hand. This was insane. He was a stranger, an enemy, and whatever she'd felt, whatever impossible pull had happened in the middle of that fight, didn't change the fact that he'd attacked her pack. Former pack, her wolf reminded her. Lena looked past Kyle into the dark trees. The wind was picking up. Snow was starting to fall. She looked back at him, and slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Kale's hand was warm. That was the first thing Lena noticed when he pulled her to her feet, how impossibly warm his skin felt against hers, solid and real. In a world that had just shattered into pieces she didn't know how to put back together. The second thing she noticed was that she was still shaking, and not just from the cold. "Can you walk?" His voice was low, rough around the edges, like he didn't use it much for gentle things. Lena tested her weight. Her legs felt like water, but they held. "Yes." Kyle nodded once, then turned and started walking without another word, still holding her hand like he expected her to collapse any second. Maybe she would. The forest was darker now, the pale morning light choked out by clouds that hung low and heavy. Snow had started to fall, not the gentle kind, but hard pellets that stung when they hit exposed skin. The wind cut through Lena's thin coat like it wasn't even there. She tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other, tried not to think about Ronan's face when he'd told her to leave, tried not to hear Garrett's voice, "You're bad luck, you're a curse," echoing in her skull. failed on all counts. They'd walked maybe 15 minutes when Kale stopped abruptly. Lena nearly ran into his back. "What?" "Quiet." His voice was barely a whisper, but the command in it was absolute. She went still. Kael's head tilted slightly, listening to something she couldn't hear. His grip on her hand tightened, then he pulled her behind a massive oak and pressed close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. "What is it?" Lena breathed. "Your pack." Ice flooded her veins. "They followed me?" "No." Kyle's jaw was tight, his gaze fixed on something through the trees. "They're still fighting mine." Lena's breath caught. She started to lean around the tree to look, but Kyle's arm shot out, blocking her. "Don't! I need to see. You need to stay hidden." His voice dropped lower, and when she met his eyes, what she saw there made her wolf whimper. Not fear. Something worse. "If they see you with me, they'll assume the worst, and I don't want to kill anyone today." The casual way he said it, like killing was just another option on a list of things he might do, should have terrified her. It didn't. Maybe because she'd just watched her own pack turn on her with the same cold efficiency. Maybe because some part of her was too numb to feel anything anymore. Or maybe because when Kale looked at her, she didn't see disgust or dismissal. She saw recognition. Voices drifted through the trees, harsh, angry. Lena recognized Marcus's shout, then Garrett's snarl in response. The sounds of a fight winding down, wolves regrouping, trying to salvage what was left of their pride. "We need to move," Kyle said quietly, before they spread out to search. He was right. If any of them caught her scent this close, they'd come looking, and she didn't want to know what Ronan would do if he found her with the enemy Alpha. Actually, she did know. That's why her hands were shaking. Kyle led her deeper into the forest, moving with a silence that spoke of years spent hunting. Lena did her best to match him, but every snapped twig under her boots sounded like a gunshot in the quiet. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 20 minutes, the trees began to change. Older, thicker, their trunks gnarled and twisted with age. The underbrush thinned out, replaced by moss-covered rocks and fallen logs that looked like they'd been there since the world was young. This wasn't neutral territory. This was his. Lena's wolf stirred uneasily, caught between the instinct to submit and the strange pull she'd felt when she'd first locked eyes with him in the clearing. That moment kept replaying in her mind, the way everything else had blurred and faded until it was just the two of them, staring at each other across a battlefield like they were the only two people who'd ever existed. Didn't make sense. None of this made sense. Kyle finally stopped at the base of a rocky outcrop, sheltered from the wind by an overhang. "We'll wait here. Let them clear out." Lena sank down onto a relatively flat rock, her legs giving out more than sitting. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving her hollow and shaking. Kale crouched in front of her, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. She didn't. "You warned them." It wasn't a question. "Yes. And they hit you for it." Lena's hand drifted to her bruised cheek before she could stop herself. "Ronan doesn't like being questioned. Ronan's a fool." The blunt assessment startled a laugh out of her, short, bitter. "He's my alpha." "Was your alpha," Kale corrected quietly. "He cast you out. You don't owe him loyalty anymore." The words hit like a slap, because he was right. She didn't have a pack, didn't have a bond, didn't have anything except the clothes on her back and a future that looked like freezing to death in a forest that didn't want her. "Why did you help me?" The question came out rougher than she meant it to. "You don't know me. Your pack was fighting mine. Why stop for me?" Kale was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving hers. "Because when I saw you," he finally said, voice low and careful, "standing there trying to warn wolves who wouldn't listen, I saw someone who deserved better than what they were giving you. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." Lena wanted to push, wanted to demand the truth, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a riptide. Her head felt too heavy. Her thoughts kept scattering. "Rest," Kale said, like he could see her struggling. "I'll keep watch." "I don't—" "Lena." The way he said her name, like it mattered, like she mattered, made something in her chest crack. "Rest. I'm not going anywhere." She wanted to argue, wanted to stay alert and ready because trusting anyone right now felt like the stupidest thing she could possibly do. But her body had other ideas. She leaned back against the cold stone and let her eyes close, just for a second, just for a breath. When she opened them again, the world had changed. The snow was falling harder now, thick and fast, turning the forest into a blur of white. The wind had picked up, howling through the trees with a sound like screaming. The storm, the one she'd felt building in her bones for days, it was here. Lena jerked upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. How long? 2 hours. Kyle was standing at the edge of the overhang, staring out at the whiteout. His jaw was tight. Storm came in fast. 2 hours. She'd been asleep for 2 hours while the weather turned deadly. We need to move, Lena said, pushing to her feet. Her body protested, stiff, sore, cold despite the brief rest. We can't. Kale's voice was flat. Visibility's too low. We'd get turned around in minutes. So we just sit here? We waited out. Lena looked past him at the wall of white beyond their shelter. The temperature had dropped viciously. She could see her breath in thick clouds, and her fingers were already going numb despite being tucked under her arms. This wasn't a storm you waited out in the open. This was a storm that killed. How far to your den? She asked. In this weather? Hours. Maybe more. Kale turned to face her, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. We're not making it back tonight. Then what? There's a cave system about a mile north. Old hunting shelter. If we can make it there, we can ride this out. If we can make it there. If, Kyle agreed. Lena looked at the storm again. A mile in this? They'd be lucky to make it 100 yards without losing their way, but staying here meant freezing. Let's go, she said. Kyle studied her for a moment, then nodded. He shrugged out of his heavy coat, the kind made for weather like this, lined with fur and thick wool, and held it out to her. Lena stared at it. I can't. Yes, you can. His tone left no room for argument. Your coat's too thin. You won't make it otherwise. What about you? I'll manage. Kyle. Put it on, Lena. She took the coat. It was still warm from his body, and when she pulled it on, it swallowed her, too big in the shoulders, the sleeves hanging past her hands. But it was warm. So warm she could have cried. Kale watched her, something unreadable in his expression, then turned and stepped out into the storm. Lena followed. The wind hit her like a fist. Even with the coat, the cold was brutal, biting through her jeans and finding every gap in the fabric. Snow pelted her face, stinging her eyes, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Kyle grabbed her hand again, tight enough to hurt, tight enough that she wouldn't lose him, and pulled her forward. They walked and walked and kept walking. Lena lost track of time, lost track of direction. Everything was white and cold, and the howl of wind that never stopped. Her legs were numb, her face felt like ice. But Kale kept moving, relentless, dragging her forward when she stumbled, and then he stopped. Lena crashed into his back, gasping. What? There. She squinted through the snow and saw it, a dark shape in the white, the mouth of a cave tucked into the side of a hill. Relief hit so hard her knees buckled. Kyle caught her, one arm around her waist, and half carried her the last 20 feet into the shelter. The cave wasn't deep, maybe 15 feet from mouth to back wall, but it was dry and out of the wind, and that was enough. Lena collapsed against the stone wall, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. Kyle was already moving, gathering deadfall from deeper in the cave where it had stayed dry. Within minutes, he had a fire going, small but steady, the flames pushing back the worst of the cold. Come here, he said, gesturing her closer to the fire. Lena crawled over, her hands so numb she could barely feel them. She held them out to the flames, hissing as feelings started to return in painful prickles. Kale sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. He was breathing hard, his hair and clothes soaked through with snow, but his expression was calm. That was close, Lena said through chattering teeth. Too close. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside. The fire crackled and popped, throwing dancing shadows on the cave walls. Lena's mind kept circling back to the same question. Why are you doing this? She finally asked. Kyle's gaze slid to her. Doing what? All of this, saving me. risking yourself in a storm. You don't even know me. I know enough. That's not an answer. It's the truth. Kale's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it, something raw. When I saw you in that clearing, when you tried to warn them and they threw it back in your face, I saw someone who cared more about keeping her pack safe than about protecting herself. That's rare. It didn't matter. They didn't listen. No, they didn't. Kale's jaw tightened. But you tried anyway. That takes courage. Lena looked away, uncomfortable with the weight of his words. Or stupidity. Not stupidity. Kale shifted, and when she glanced back, he was watching her with that same intense focus that made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. You felt something wrong in that forest. Your instincts were screaming at you, and you trusted them even when everyone else said you were wrong. A lot of good it did me. You're alive, Kyle said simply. That's more than some of your packmates can say. The words hit like ice water. What do you mean? Kyle's expression went carefully neutral. 3 of your wolves didn't make it out of that fight. Lena's breath stopped. 3. 3 dead. Because Ronan wouldn't listen. Because he was too proud, too arrogant, too convinced of his own strength to see the danger. And she'd tried to warn him. Who? The word came out barely a whisper. I don't know their names. Lena pressed her hands to her face, the weight of it crushing. 3 wolves. 3 lives that might have been saved if Ronan had just listened. Hey! Kale's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and steady. That's not on you. I warned them, and they ignored you. That's on them. His grip tightened slightly. You did everything you could. Don't carry their mistakes. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of the guilt twisting in her gut. But all she could see was Garrett's face when he'd shoved her, the other wolves turning away, Ronan's cold dismissal. They'd blamed her, and maybe they were right. Stop, Kyle said, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. I can see what you're doing. Stop. You don't know what You're blaming yourself for their stupidity. His eyes were hard now, fierce. You warned them, multiple times. They chose not to listen. Their blood isn't on your hands. Then whose hands is it on? The Alpha, who led them into a fight they couldn't win. Kale's voice was flat, final. And mine for making sure they understood what happens when you cross into Draven territory without permission. The casual brutality of it should have shocked her. It didn't, because she'd seen the alternative, had seen what happened when Alphas ruled with arrogance instead of wisdom. People died. The fire crackled between them, the only sound besides the howl of wind outside. Get some sleep, Kale said finally. Storm's not letting up anytime soon. We're stuck here until morning. Lena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her again, heavier this time. The warmth of the fire, the coat wrapped around her, the strange safety she felt with Kyle nearby. It all conspired to drag her under. She curled up on her side, tucking her hands under her cheek. Kyle? Yeah? Thank you. Silence. Then, so quiet she almost missed it. You're welcome, Walton. She woke to shouting. Lena jerked upright, disoriented, her heart racing. The fire had burned down to embers, and pale gray light filtered through the cave mouth, dawn, or close to it. The storm had stopped, but the shouting hadn't. Kyle was already on his feet, standing at the cave entrance with his body tensed like he was ready to fight. Stay back, he said without looking at her. Lena scrambled up, her legs protesting. What's... And then she saw them. Wolves. A dozen at least, spread out in a loose semicircle in the snow outside the cave. Ashford wolves, her former pack. And at the center, staring at Kale with murder in his eyes, was Ronan. So it's true, Ronan said, his voice carrying across the distance. You're harboring our Omega. She's not yours anymore, Kale replied, his tone dangerously calm. You cast her out, remember? That doesn't give you the right to take her. I didn't take her. She came with me. Kale's shoulders shifted, his posture radiating threat. And she's staying. Lena's blood turned to ice. This was bad. This was so bad. Lena. Ronan's gaze found her over Kyle's shoulder. Come here. Now. She didn't move. I said, come here. She doesn't take orders from you anymore, Kael said, his voice dropping into something that made Lena's wolf want to roll over and show her throat. She's under my protection. Your protection? Ronan's laugh was ugly. You mean she's your prisoner? She's free to leave any time she wants. Kael shifted slightly, angling his body to block Lena from view. But she's choosing to stay. With me. Bullshit. Ronan took a step forward, and half his wolves moved with him. You coerced her, threatened her. She's Omega. She doesn't know any better. Heat flooded Lena's face. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said, her voice shaking but clear. She stepped up beside Kael, ignoring his growl of warning. You threw me out, Ronan. You hit me. You called me a curse and told me to leave. So I did. You betrayed us. I tried to save you. The words ripped out of her, loud and raw. I warned you, over and over, and you wouldn't listen. And now 3 wolves are dead because of your pride. Ronan's face went red. You don't get to... She gets to say whatever she wants, Kael cut in. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. And you're going to listen. Because right now, you're standing in my territory, surrounded by my wolves, and the only reason you're still breathing is because I'm choosing to let you. Lena blinked, looked past Ronan, and saw them. Draven wolves. At least 20, maybe more, emerging from the trees in absolute silence. They moved like shadows, surrounding Ronan's group with brutal efficiency. They'd been there the whole time, waiting. Ronan saw them too. His face went pale, then hard. This isn't over, he said, his eyes locked on Lena. You belong to Ashford, and I'm going to bring you back where you belong. She belongs to herself, Kael said softly. And if you ever set foot in my territory again, I will end you. Are we clear? The threat hung in the air like smoke. Ronan's jaw worked, fury and humiliation warring in his expression. But he wasn't stupid. He could count. He was outnumbered, outmatched. Fall back, he finally said to his wolves. They retreated slowly, never turning their backs, keeping their eyes on the Draven wolves surrounding them. Ronan was the last to go. He looked at Lena one more time, and the hatred in his eyes made her stomach twist. This isn't over, he repeated. And then he turned and walked into the forest, his pack following. Lena stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Kael turned to her, his expression unreadable. You okay? No, she said honestly. Yeah. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. Me neither. One of the Draven wolves approached, a tall female with silver streaking her dark hair. Alpha. Should we follow them? Make sure they actually leave? Yes, but don't engage unless they circle back. Kael's gaze swept over his wolves. Everyone else, back to the den. Now. They moved instantly, melting back into the forest as silently as they'd appeared. Kael turned to Lena. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. She nodded numbly and let him lead her away from the cave, away from the confrontation, deeper into Draven territory. But with every step, one thought kept circling through her mind. Ronan wasn't going to let this go. He was coming back. And next time, he wouldn't be alone. Next time, there would be blood. Ronan wasn't going to let this go. He was coming back. And next time, he wouldn't be alone. Next time, there would be blood. The thought circled through Lena's mind like a vulture as she followed Kael through the forest. Her legs moved automatically, one foot in front of the other, but her brain was elsewhere, replaying Ronan's face, the hatred in his eyes, the promise in his voice. This isn't over. No, it wasn't. The Draven den came into view through the trees, carved stone and firelight and wolves moving with purpose. It should have felt safe. Should have felt like sanctuary. Instead, it felt like a target. Lena. She jerked her head up. Kael had stopped, was watching her with those sharp golden eyes that saw too much. I'm fine, she said automatically. You're not. He took a step closer, and his voice dropped. Talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. Ronan made his position clear. And you're scared. It wasn't a question, but Lena bristled anyway. I'm not... Being scared doesn't make you weak, Kael interrupted. His gaze held hers steady and unwavering. It makes you smart. Ronan's dangerous. You know that better than anyone. Lena's throat tightened. She looked away, focusing on the den entrance where a handful of wolves had gathered to watch their approach. He's not going to stop, she said quietly. He'll come back. And people are going to get hurt because of me. People are going to get hurt because Ronan's a prideful bastard who can't handle being told no. Kale's jaw was tight. This isn't on you. Then why does it feel like it is? Kale didn't answer right away. When she glanced back at him, something had shifted in his expression, something raw and unguarded. Because you care, he said finally, about people who don't deserve it. The words hit harder than they should have. Before Lena could respond, one of the Draven wolves jogged over, a lean male with scars crossing his forearm and eyes that assessed Lena with cool suspicion. Alpha, council's waiting. Kyle nodded once. Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. The male hesitated, his gaze flicking to Lena again. They want to discuss the Ashford situation. And her. I know what they want to discuss, Marcus. Kale's voice went flat, dangerous. 10 minutes. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded and left. Lena watched him go, her stomach nodding. They don't want me here. They don't know you yet. They don't trust me. There's a difference. Kale turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I trust you. That's all that matters. Is it? Lena gestured toward the den where more wolves had gathered, watching them with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your pack thinks you made a mistake bringing me here. Then they can challenge me. The casual way he said it, like he'd welcome the fight, should have scared her. It didn't. Come on, Kyle said, his hand settling on her lower back. Let's get you inside before you freeze. She let him guide her into the den, hyper-aware of the eyes tracking their every move. The council chamber was smaller than Lena expected, a circular room carved from stone with a fire burning in the center and wooden benches arranged in a half circle. 7 wolves sat waiting, their expressions varying degrees of skeptical. Kyle entered first, and Lena followed, trying to ignore the way her wolf was screaming at her to submit, to show her throat, to prove she wasn't a threat. She kept her chin up. This is Lena Virel, Kyle said without preamble. Former Ashford Omega, currently under my protection. Currently, one of the council members repeated, a gray-haired female with sharp eyes. Does that mean temporarily? That means as long as she wants to stay, Kyle replied evenly. And what does she want? This from a broad-shouldered male who looked like he ate nails for breakfast. Because bringing an enemy wolf into our territory without consulting the council seems like a decision that affects all of us. She's not an enemy. She was exiled. So she says. The male leaned forward. How do we know she's not a spy? That Ronan didn't send her here to gather intelligence? Heat crawled up Lena's neck. He didn't. With respect, the male continued, ignoring her. Omegas are easily manipulated. Ronan could have staged the whole thing. I'm standing right here, Lena said, her voice sharper than intended. And I'm not manipulated or stupid or a spy. Ronan threw me out because I tried to warn him about your territory, and he didn't want to hear it. That's it. Silence fell. The gray-haired female's eyebrows rose slightly. You warned him? Multiple times. He ignored me, and 3 wolves died because of it. And yet you still defend him. I'm not defending him. Lena's hands curled into fists at her sides. I'm telling you what happened. Ronan made a mistake, a fatal one. And instead of accepting responsibility, he blamed me. Why? This from a younger male with kind eyes. Why blame you? Because I'm Omega. The words tasted bitter. Because in Ashford, if you're Omega, you're invisible until something goes wrong. Then suddenly you're the easiest target. The gray-haired female exchanged a glance with Kyle. Something passed between them, understanding maybe or recognition. Tell us about the confrontation this morning, she said. Lena did. She kept it brief, factual, leaving out the part where her heart had nearly stopped when she'd seen Ronan's face. When she finished, the council members were silent. He'll come back, the broad-shouldered male said finally. Ronan's not the type to accept defeat. I know, Kael replied, and when he does, we'll be at war. The male's gaze was hard. Over an Omega who's been here less than a week. Over a wolf under my protection, Kael corrected, his voice dropping into something that made Lena's wolf whimper. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, now's the time to say it. No one spoke, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Dismissed, Kael said finally. The council filed out, some casting glances at Lena that ranged from curious to contemptuous. The gray-haired female was the last to leave, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, she said quietly, looking at Lena, I believe you. About the warning. Then she was gone. Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That went well, she said flatly. Kael almost smiled. Could have been worse. How? They could have voted to throw you out. Lena's stomach dropped. They can do that? They can try. Kael's expression hardened. But they won't. Not while I'm alpha. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it just made the weight on Lena's chest heavier. Because she knew that protecting her was going to cost him. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But soon. The next 3 days passed in a blur of tension. Lena stayed mostly in her room, venturing out only for meals and the occasional walk around the perimeter with Nessa, who'd appointed herself as some kind of unofficial guide. Don't take it personally, Nessa said on the third day as they walked the boundary line. The pack's been on edge since Ashford started pushing into our territory 6 months ago. You're just a convenient target for their frustration. That's supposed to make me feel better? Nessa shrugged. I didn't say it was fair. I'm just explaining the reality. Lena kicked at a clump of snow. Kael's going to regret bringing me here. Maybe. Nessa's tone was maddeningly casual. Or maybe you'll prove everyone wrong. How am I supposed to do that when half the pack won't even look at me? Give them a reason to. Lena stopped walking. What's that supposed to mean? Nessa turned to face her, arms crossed. You want respect? Earn it. Show them you're more than just some scared Omega who needs protecting. I'm not. I know you're not, Nessa interrupted, but they don't. So either prove it or accept that you're always going to be an outsider here. The words stung because they were true. Lena had spent her entire life being invisible, being dismissed, being told her instincts didn't matter. And here she was, in a new pack, falling into the same pattern. How? She asked quietly. Nessa's expression softened slightly. Start by showing up, to training, to pack meetings. Stop hiding in your room like you're ashamed to exist. I'm not ashamed. Then act like it. That evening, Lena showed up to the communal dinner. The great hall fell silent when she walked in. Dozens of eyes turned her way, some curious, some hostile, most just wary. Lena's wolf wanted to run. She walked to an empty spot at one of the long tables and sat down. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Nessa dropped onto the bench beside her with a grin. About time you joined us. The tension broke. Conversations resumed, though Lena could still feel the weight of stares on her back. A bowl of stew appeared in front of her, thick and steaming, smelling like herbs and meat. She looked up to find a young female with braided hair watching her. You looked hungry, the female said with a shrug, then walked away. Lena stared at the bowl, something tight in her chest loosening just slightly. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. She was halfway through the meal when the doors slammed open. Kael strode in, his expression thunderous, and the entire hall went quiet. Border Patrol just reported movement, he said, his voice carrying across the room. Ashford wolves, 20, maybe more, half a mile out and closing fast. Ice flooded Lena's veins. Battle positions, Kael ordered. Secure the perimeter. No one crosses the boundary line without my direct order. Wolves surged to their feet, moving with practiced efficiency. Some shifted mid-stride, others grabbed weapons from racks along the walls. Lena stood frozen, her heart hammering. Kael's gaze found hers across the room. For a moment, everything else faded. Then he was moving, striding toward her with purpose. You need to go to the interior chambers, he said low and urgent. Now! I'm not hiding. This isn't about hiding. His hands gripped her shoulders. and the desperation in his eyes stole her breath. If Ronan gets to you, I can't. He broke off, jaw working. Please, just go. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could fight, could help, could do something. But the fear in his eyes stopped her. Okay, she whispered. Relief flashed across his face. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers for one brief moment. Stay safe, he breathed. Then he was gone, moving toward the entrance with his wolves falling in behind him. Nessa appeared at Lena's elbow. Come on, I'll take you. No, Nessa blinked. What? I'm not going to the interior chambers. Lena's mind was racing, pieces clicking together. I'm going to stop this. Are you insane? If you go out there, Ronan will... Ronan came for me. Lena met Nessa's gaze. This fight is happening because of me, which means I'm the only one who can end it. By getting yourself killed? By giving him what he wants. Nessa's eyes went wide. You can't be serious. He wants me back, right? Wants to prove I belong to Ashford? Lena's heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. So I'll go to him, I'll talk to him, and I'll make him see that this war is pointless. He won't listen. Then I'll make him listen. Lena turned toward the door. One way or another, this ends tonight. Huh. Kyle will lose his mind if you... Kale will lose wolves if I don't. Lena looked back at Nessa, and she saw the moment the other woman understood. Please, don't stop me. Nessa stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she stepped aside. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, she said. Probably both. Lena walked toward the door, her pulse roaring in her ears. This was insane. This was suicidal. But if there was even a chance, even the smallest possibility, that she could stop bloodshed, she had to try. She'd spent her whole life being powerless. Not anymore. The boundary line was chaos. Lena could see them from 100 yards out, two packs facing each other across an invisible line, bristling with tension. Kyle stood at the front of the Draven wolves, his posture radiating controlled violence. Across from him, Ronan mirrored his stance, flanked by Garrett and a dozen others. They hadn't attacked yet, but it was coming. Lena could feel it in the air, electric and inevitable. She took a breath and stepped into the clearing. Lena, no. That was Kyle's voice, sharp with panic. She ignored him, walked straight toward the boundary line, her hands raised, her heart in her throat. Stop, she called out, her voice carrying across the clearing. Everyone just stop. Both packs went still. Ronan's eyes locked onto her, and something dark and triumphant flickered in his expression. Lana, his voice was almost gentle. Come here. Come home. I don't have a home. Lena stopped at this boundary line, right in the space between the two packs. You made sure of that. I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. Her voice was shaking, but she pushed through. You hit me. You threw me out. You told me I was worthless. That wasn't a mistake, Ronan. That was a choice. Ronan's jaw tightened. You betrayed us. I tried to save you. The words ripped out of her, raw and furious. I warned you. I begged you to listen, and you punished me for it. So don't you dare stand there and pretend this is about loyalty. Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then what is it about? Ronan's voice was dangerously soft. Pride. Lena met his gaze, unflinching. You can't stand that I left, that I chose someone else, that an Omega had the audacity to walk away from you. You didn't choose. He took you. He gave me a choice, Lena's voice cracked. Something you never did. He asked me what I wanted. He treated me like I mattered. And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Because if other wolves see that Omegas can have agency, can have power, your whole system falls apart. Ronan's face went red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Lena's hands were shaking, but she kept them raised. And I know that if you attack Draven Pack tonight, more wolves are going to die, just like before. Just like every time you refuse to listen to anyone but yourself. This isn't your decision. You're right. It's not. Lena took a breath, and what came out next was the most terrifying thing she'd ever said. It's yours, Ronan. You can walk away right now. You can let me go. Or you can fight, and you can lose, and you can bury more packmates. Your choice. For a long, terrible moment, Ronan just stared at her. Then he laughed, cold and bitter. You think you're so smart, he said softly. You think you've got it all figured out, but you're still just a scared little Omega playing at being brave. Maybe, Lena said. But at least I'm not a coward hiding behind violence because I'm too afraid to admit I was wrong. Ronan's eyes flashed. He lunged. Everything happened at once. Kale roared and surged forward, but Lena was faster. She'd been expecting this, had planned for this, and she shifted mid-step, her wolf bursting free in a flood of adrenaline. She was small, barely half Ronan's size, but she was quick. She dodged his first strike, felt his claws whistle past her ear, spun and snapped at his flank. Ronan snarled and whirled, massive and furious, and Lena knew she couldn't win this fight. But she didn't need to win. She just needed to survive long enough for Ronan to see. She ducked under another swipe, her paws scrabbling in the snow. Ronan's jaws closed on empty air. Stop! Kale's voice, human and desperate. Ronan, stop! But Ronan wasn't stopping. He slammed into Lena with his full weight, and she went down hard, her breath exploding out of her lungs. Pain. Stars, Ronan's teeth closing around her throat, and then he froze. Lena could feel it, the moment he realized what he was doing. Could feel the shift in his grip from attack to something else. Slowly, Ronan released her, stepped back, shifted back to human form, breathing hard, his hands shaking. You didn't fight back, he said, his voice hoarse. Lena shifted too, gasping, her hand going to her throat. No blood. He'd held back at the last second. No, she managed. I didn't. Why? Because I'm not your enemy, Ronan. Lena pushed herself to her knees, then to her feet, swaying. I never was, and killing me won't fix what's broken in you. Ronan stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Behind him, the Ashford wolves were silent, watching. Behind Lena, the Draven pack hadn't moved. Everyone was waiting. Go home, Lena said quietly. Please, just go home. For a long moment, Ronan didn't move. Then, slowly, he turned to his wolves. Fall back, he said, his voice rough. Garrett stepped forward. Alpha, we can't just... I said fall back. Ronan's tone left no room for argument. The Ashford wolves retreated, some reluctantly, others with relief playing on their faces. Ronan looked at Lena one last time. This doesn't make us even, he said quietly. I don't want us to be even. I want us to be done. Something flickered in Ronan's eyes. Regret, maybe, or grief. Then he turned and walked into the forest, and his pack followed. Lena stood there, shaking, her throat aching, and watched them disappear. When the last wolf had vanished into the trees, her legs gave out. Kyle caught her before she hit the ground, his arms wrapping around her, his voice a low rumble in her ear. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking... Lena's voice broke. I was thinking I could stop it. You almost got yourself killed, but I didn't. She pulled back to look at him, and the fear in his eyes made her chest ache. I stopped the fight, Kale. I stopped the war. You risked everything. I know. Lena's hands fisted in his shirt. But it worked. It worked. Kale stared at her, a dozen emotions warring in his expression. Then he pulled her close again, his face buried in her hair, and she felt him shaking. Don't ever do that again, he whispered. I can't promise that. Lena, if it means keeping people safe... She closed her eyes. I'll do it every time. Kael's arms tightened around her, and she felt the full weight of what had just happened crash over her. She'd stood up to Ronan. She'd stopped a war. She'd survived. But when she opened her eyes and saw the faces of the Draven wolves watching her, some awed, some shocked, some still suspicious, she realized something. This wasn't over, not even close, because Ronan had retreated tonight, but he'd also made a promise. This doesn't make us even. And Lena knew, with a certainty that settled in her bones like ice, that the real fight was still coming. And Lena knew, with a certainty that settled in her bones like ice, that the real fight was still coming. Kale half carried her back to the den, his jaw tight, his silence louder than any argument. Lena's legs worked fine, mostly, But he wouldn't let go of her, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he loosened his grip even slightly. The Draven wolves parted as they passed, creating a corridor of staring faces. Some looked impressed. Some looked horrified. A few looked angry, though whether at her or at Kael for bringing her here in the first place, Lena couldn't tell. She was too tired to care. Her throat ached where Ronan's teeth had pressed. Not broken skin, but close enough that every swallow sent a spike of pain through her neck. Her ribs hurt from where she'd hit the ground. Everything hurt, really, but that was fine. She was alive. That was more than she'd expected 10 minutes ago. Kael steered her into a room she'd never seen before, larger than hers, with a massive bed and a fireplace already crackling with warmth. His room, she realized. The Alpha's quarters. "Sit," he said, his voice rough. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, watching as he moved to a cabinet and pulled out medical supplies with jerky, too precise movements. "Kael, don't." He crossed back to her, crouching so they were eye level. "Don't say anything right now, because if you try to justify what you just did, I'm going to lose my mind." Lena's throat tightened. "I stopped the fight. You walked into the middle of two hostile packs and offered yourself as bait." His hands were shaking as he tilted her chin up, examining her neck. "Do you have any idea what would have happened if I hadn't been fast enough? If Ronan had—" He broke off, his jaw working. "But he didn't. Because you got lucky." Kael's eyes blazed. "You bet your life on Ronan having a conscience, and that was the stupidest, most reckless—" He stopped himself, breathing hard. "It wasn't luck," Lena said quietly. "I knew he wouldn't kill me." "How?" "Because if he'd wanted me dead, he would have killed me when he exiled me." She held Kael's gaze. "He's a lot of things. Arrogant, violent, prideful, but he's not a murderer. Not of his own wolves. You're not his wolf anymore." "No, but I was." Lena winced as Kael pressed a salve to her neck. "And some part of him still sees me that way. As property, maybe, or as something he lost. But not as an enemy. That's why I knew he'd hesitate." Kael stared at her for a long moment, something raw and painful moving behind his eyes. "You could have died," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know. And you did it anyway." "Yes." "Why?" The question hung between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Lena took a breath. "Because I'm tired of being powerless. I'm tired of hiding and hoping someone else will fix things. And I'm tired of watching people I care about get hurt because of me. This isn't—" "It is." She caught his hand, stilling his movements. "Ronan came here for me. Those wolves were ready to fight and die because of me. So I made a choice. I used the only power I had, myself, to stop it." Kael's fingers tightened around hers. "You could have talked to me first. Would you have let me go?" Silence. "Exactly," Lena said softly. Kael's expression twisted. He stood abruptly, pacing to the fireplace. "You don't understand what it was like. Watching you walk out there. Watching him attack you. I've been in hundreds of fights, Lena. I've led wolves into battle. I've seen things—" He broke off. One hand braced against the mantel. "But nothing has ever terrified me the way that did." The confession hit her like a physical blow. She stood, crossing to him on unsteady legs. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize for being brave." Kael turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. "Just promise me you'll talk to me before you do something like that again." "I can't promise that." His jaw tightened. "But," Lena added quickly, "I can promise I'll try. If there's time. If it's possible." "That's not good enough. It's all I can give you." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him. "I won't lie to you, Kael. I won't make promises I can't keep. But I will tell you this. I'm not going to stop fighting for what I think is right, even if it scares you. Even if it scares me." For a long moment, Kael just looked at her. Then, slowly, he reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. "You're going to be the death of me," he murmured, "or the making of you." Something that might have been a laugh escaped him. Same thing. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. It was desperate and furious and tasted like fear and relief and something deeper that Lena didn't have words for. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, and felt the bond between them snap into place with an almost audible click. Mate. The word echoed through her mind, through her wolf, through every cell in her body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kyle pressed his forehead to hers. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "You won't." "You don't know that." "No." Lena's hand slid up to frame his face. "But I know I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to leave." "Never." The word was fierce, absolute. "You hear me? Never." Lena smiled despite everything. "Then I guess you're stuck with me." "Good." They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other, while the fire crackled and the reality of what had just happened slowly sank in. She'd stopped a war. She'd faced down her former alpha. She'd survived. And in the process, she'd claimed something she'd never had before. Power. Not the kind that came from strength or dominance. The kind that came from knowing her worth and refusing to back down. It felt good. Terrifying, but good. A knock at the door broke the moment. Kyle pulled back with a sigh. "What?" The door opened a crack and Nessa stuck her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but the council wants to see you, both of you." Lena's stomach dropped. "Now?" "Now." Nessa's expression was unreadable. "They're not happy." "Of course they're not," Kyle muttered. He looked at Lena. "You up for this?" "No, not even a little." "Yes," she said anyway. Kale's lips quirked into something that wasn't quite a smile. Liar. Takes one to know one. The council chamber felt different this time. Colder, maybe, or just more hostile. All 7 members were present, their expressions ranging from incredulous to furious. The gray-haired female, Alara, Lena had learned her name was, spoke first. "What you did tonight was reckless." Her voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. "You put yourself in danger, you risked igniting the very war you were trying to prevent, and you did it without consulting anyone." "I did what I had to do," Lena replied, keeping her voice steady. "You nearly got yourself killed." "But I didn't." "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point." Lena stepped forward, ignoring Kyle's warning growl. "Ronan came here for me. He was ready to fight because of me, so I took responsibility. I gave him a chance to back down with his pride intact. And it worked. This time, Marcus, the broad-shouldered male, cut in. What about next time? What happens when Ronan decides words aren't enough? Then we deal with it." Lena met his gaze. "But at least we'll have tried diplomacy first." "Diplomacy?" Marcus's laugh was harsh. "You call throwing yourself at an enemy alpha's feet diplomacy?" "I call it giving him a choice." Lena's hands curled into fists. "Which is more than he ever gave me." Silence fell. Alara leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "You're asking us to trust your judgment, to believe that an Omega we've known for less than a week understands our enemy better than we do." "I'm not asking you to trust my judgment." Lena took a breath. "I'm asking you to look at the results. No one died tonight. No one got hurt. Ronan retreated. That's what matters." "For now," another council member muttered. "Yes, for now." Lena turned to face them all. "I can't promise you Ronan won't come back. I can't promise there won't be more conflicts. But I can promise you this, I will do everything in my power to prevent bloodshed, even if it means putting myself at risk. Because that's what you do when you care about your pack." The words hung in the air. "This isn't your pack," Marcus said quietly. The statement hit like a slap. "You're right," Lena said after a moment. "It's not. I haven't earned that yet, but I'd like to, if you'll let me." More silence. Then Alara stood. "I move that we grant Lena full status as a member of Draven Pack, probationary for now, to be reevaluated in 3 months." Several council members looked startled. "Seconded," said the younger male with kind eyes. "Are you serious?" Marcus demanded. After what she just did," Alara interrupted, "which was risk her life to protect ours. Say what you will about her methods, but her loyalty is clear. Marcus's jaw worked. He looked at Kyle. Alpha? Kyle's gaze was on Lena, something fierce and proud in his expression. I support the motion. Of course you do, Marcus muttered. All in favor? Ilara called. 4 hands went up, 3 stayed down. Motion passes, Ilara said. Welcome to Draven Pack, Lena Viral, probationary member. Lena's knees felt weak. Thank you. Don't thank us yet. Ilara's smile was thin. You've got 3 months to prove you belong here. Use them wisely. The council filed out, some casting looks at Lena that were slightly less hostile than before. When the last one had gone, Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That went better than expected, Kyle said. They hate me. Half of them hate you. The other half just don't trust you yet. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. But that'll change. How do you know? Because you're going to show them. Kyle tilted her chin up. Just like you showed me. The next morning, Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. It took her a moment to remember. She'd fallen asleep in Kyle's room, in his bed, with him wrapped around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. He was still asleep, his face relaxed in a way she'd never seen while he was awake. The scars stood out more in the morning light, mapping a history of violence across his skin. Lena traced one gently with her finger, and Kyle's eyes fluttered open. Morning, he rumbled, his voice rough with sleep. Morning. Sleep okay? Better than I have in weeks. It was true, despite everything, the fight, the confrontation with the council, the uncertainty of her future, she'd slept deeply and dreamlessly. Safe. Kyle smiled, slow and devastating. Good. A knock at the door interrupted whatever might have happened next. Kale growled. This better be important. It is, Nessa's voice muffled through the wood. You're going to want to see this. They dressed quickly and followed Nessa outside into the crisp morning air. A crowd had gathered in the main clearing, wolves clustered in groups, talking in low, urgent voices. What's going on? Kyle asked. Nessa pointed. Standing at the edge of the clearing, looking uncomfortable and defiant in equal measure, was Garrett. Lena's heart stuttered. What is he doing here? She breathed. That's what we're trying to figure out. Nessa's hand was on her knife. He showed up about 20 minutes ago, asked to speak to you, specifically. Lena looked at Kyle, whose expression had gone cold and dangerous. You don't have to talk to him, he said quietly. I know. But Lena was already moving forward, her pulse pounding. Garrett watched her approach with eyes that held, what? Guilt? Regret? It was hard to tell. You've got some nerve showing up here, Lena said when she was close enough. I know. Garrett's voice was rough. But I needed to talk to you, to tell you. He broke off, his jaw working. To tell you that you were right. Lena blinked. What? About the Northern Territory. About Ronan. About all of it. Garrett looked away, his hands clenched. After you left, 3 more wolves died. In fights we shouldn't have picked. Against enemies we weren't prepared for. Because Ronan won't listen, won't change, won't admit when he's wrong. I'm sorry, Lena said, and meant it. Don't be. Garrett's gaze snapped back to her. You tried to warn us. We didn't listen. That's on us. On me. He took a breath. I came here to apologize. And to ask, he hesitated. To ask if there's room in Draven Pack for one more. Shocked silence rippled through the watching wolves. Lena stared at him. You want to leave Ashford? I want to stop watching my packmates die for one wolf's pride. Garrett's voice was steady now. You stood up to Ronan. You walked away. And you survived. I want that. I want to be part of something that values intelligence over brute force. That's not your decision to make, Kyle said, stepping up beside Lena. His voice was cold. You were there when they exiled her, when they threw her out to die. I know. Garrett met his gaze. I was wrong. I was a coward. And if you want to turn me away, I'll understand. But I'm asking anyway. Because I don't have anywhere else to go. Kyle looked at Lena. Your call. The weight of every eye in the clearing pressed down on her. This was a test, Lena realized. Not just for Garrett, but for her. The pack was watching to see what she'd do, whether she'd show mercy or vengeance. She thought about that night in the forest, Garrett's hands shoving her, his voice calling her a curse. She thought about the 3 wolves who'd died. She thought about the choice she'd made when facing Ronan, to offer peace instead of violence. "You can stay," she said finally. "Probationary status, same as me. But if you betray this pack, if you hurt anyone here, I'll personally throw you out myself. Clear?" Garrett's eyes widened. "Clear, thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Lena turned to Kael. "He'll need to prove himself, just like I do." Kael studied Garrett for a long moment, then nodded. "Nessa, take him to the barracks, get him settled, and keep an eye on him." "With pleasure," Nessa said, jerking her head at Garrett. "Come on." As they walked away, the crowd began to disperse, wolves talking among themselves in voices that ranged from approving to skeptical. "That was a risk," Kael said quietly. "I know." Lena watched Garrett's retreating back. "But if we want things to change, we have to be willing to give people a second chance. Even people who hurt you? Especially them." Lena looked up at him. "Otherwise, what's the point?" Kael's expression softened. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You're going to change everything, you know that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Ask me in 3 months." Word spread fast. By evening, 3 more Ashford wolves had shown up at the border, asking for asylum. By the end of the week, it was 7. Ronan's pack was fracturing, and Lena was at the center of it. The Draven wolves' attitude toward her shifted, not all at once, but gradually. Some still didn't trust her, but others started seeking her out, asking her questions about Ashford, about Ronan's strategies, about the defectors. She became a bridge, whether she wanted to be or not. Kael watched it happen with a mix of pride and concern. "You're making enemies," he told her one night as they walked the perimeter. "I know. Ronan's not going to forgive this. Every wolf that leaves him and comes here makes him look weaker. Eventually, he's going to retaliate." "Let him." Lena's voice was steady. "I'm not afraid of him anymore." "You should be." "Why?" She turned to face him. "What's the worst he can do? Kill me? He had the chance and he didn't take it. Exile me, already done. He's lost his power over me, Kael, and that's what terrifies him." Kael stared at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, just—" He shook his head. "A month ago, you were a frightened Omega who thought her voice didn't matter. Now you're dismantling an enemy pack from the inside and staring down alphas twice your size. It's impressive." Heat crept up Lena's neck. "I'm not trying to dismantle anything." "Yes, you are." Kael's smile was fierce. "And it's working." Before Lena could respond, a howl split the night, long, urgent, coming from the eastern border. Kael's expression went hard. "That's the alarm." They ran. By the time they reached the border, a dozen Draven wolves had already assembled, weapons drawn, facing a group of figures in the darkness. But it wasn't an attack. It was a delegation. 6 wolves stood at the boundary line, their hands raised in a gesture of peace. At the front was a female Lena recognized, one of Ashford's senior betas, a wolf named Sarah, who'd always been fair, if distant. "We're not here to fight," Sarah called out. "We're here to talk. To Lena." Lena stepped forward, ignoring Kael's growl of warning. "I'm listening," she said. Sarah took a breath. "Ronan's planning something, an attack. He's been gathering allies from neighboring packs, promising them territory and resources if they help him take down Draven." Ice flooded Lena's veins. "When?" 3 days. Maybe less." Sarah's expression was grim. "We don't want to be part of it. We don't want more wolves to die for his pride. So we're asking, begging, for sanctuary. For all of us." Murmurs rippled through the Draven wolves. Kyle stepped up beside Lena. "How do we know this isn't a trap?" "You don't." Sarah's gaze was steady. "But we're offering you intelligence, battle plans, everything we know about Ronan's strategy, in exchange for safety." Lena looked at Kael. "We have to take them in. We don't have to do anything. If what she's saying is true, we need that information." Lena turned back to Sarah. "How many are coming?" Ronan's bringing 20 of his own. The allied packs are sending maybe 30 more. You'll be outnumbered 2-1. Worse than Lena had feared. We'll take the intelligence, Kael said. But I need proof you're not lying. Sarah reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Battle plans, Ronan's handwriting. That enough? Kael took the paper, scanned it, his expression darkening with every line. When did you get this? He asked. This morning. He's not being subtle anymore. He wants everyone to know he's coming for you. Kael looked at Lena, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. The risk, the opportunity. Let them in, she said quietly. All of them. Lena, we're going to need every wolf we can get if we're facing 50 enemies, and if they're willing to betray Ronan to save lives, that says something. Kael held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned to Sarah. Cross the border, slowly. Any aggressive moves and my wolves will cut you down. Understand? Understood. The 6 wolves crossed into Draven territory, and Lena felt the shift in the air, tension mixing with relief, mixing with the electric sense that everything was about to change. As they were escorted toward the den, Alara appeared at Lena's elbow. That was well done, the older woman said quietly. Lena looked at her in surprise. You think so? I think you just gained us intelligence that could save lives. And you did it by showing mercy. Alara's expression was thoughtful. You're learning fast. I'm trying. Keep it up. Alara's gaze swept over the defectors. But be careful. Ronan's not going to take this lying down. I know. Do you? Alara's voice dropped. Because when he comes, he's not going to target Kael. He's going to target you. You're the reason his pack is falling apart. You're the threat he can't tolerate. The words settled in Lena's chest like stones. Then let him come, she said quietly. I'm not running anymore. Alara studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Good. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Kael mobilized every wolf in the pack, turning the den into a fortress. Defenses were reinforced. Scouts were posted at every border. The defectors were questioned extensively, their information cross-referenced and verified. And Lena trained. Not in combat, she'd never be a fighter, and she'd accepted that. But in strategy, in reading terrain, in understanding how wolves moved and thought and fought. Nessa became her reluctant teacher, drilling her on pack dynamics and battle tactics until Lena's head spun. You're not going to be on the front lines, Nessa said on the second day. Kael would lose his mind. I know. Lena studied the map spread out in front of them. But I need to understand what's happening, need to be able to see the patterns. Why? Because Ronan's going to do something unexpected, something that plays to his strengths and our weaknesses. And I need to figure out what that is before it's too late. Nessa looked at her with something like respect. You really think you can outthink him? I think I'm the only one who knows how he thinks. Lena traced the boundary line on the map. He's arrogant. He relies on brute force, but he's also smart when he wants to be. He'll look for the gap in our defenses and exploit it. So we cover all the gaps. We can't. Lena shook her head. We don't have enough wolves, so we need to make him think there's a gap where there isn't. Lead him into a trap. Nessa's eyebrows rose. You want to use yourself as bait again? Not me specifically, but something he wants badly enough to take risks for. Like what? Lena stared at the map, pieces clicking together in her mind. Like the den itself, she said slowly. If he thinks it's vulnerable, if he thinks he can take it in one push, he'll commit everything. And that's when we hit him from the sides. Nessa was quiet for a moment. That's actually not a bad plan. Don't sound so surprised. Can't help it. But Nessa was grinning. Come on, let's take this to Kael. Kael hated the plan. Absolutely not, he said flatly when Lena finished explaining. You're asking me to make the den look undefended so Ronan will attack it directly. That's insane. It's strategic, Lena countered. If we spread out too thin trying to defend everything, he'll pick us apart. But if we concentrate our forces in hidden positions and let him overcommit, we can end this in one fight. And if it doesn't work, we lose everything. If we don't try, we lose anyway. Lena met his gaze. Kael, we're outnumbered. Playing defensive isn't going to save us. We need to be smart. We need to surprise him. Kael's jaw worked. He looked at the map, at the plan Lena had sketched out, at the faces of his council members who'd gathered to hear her proposal. Opinions? He asked finally. Elara spoke first. It's risky, but it could work. If Ronan sees what looks like an easy target, his pride won't let him resist. And if he doesn't take the bait, Marcus challenged, then we fight him on open ground and hope for the best. Lena's voice was steady, but at least we'll have tried something other than just waiting for him to slaughter us. Silence fell. Kael looked at Lena, something complicated in his expression. You're asking me to risk everything on your read of Ronan's character, he said quietly. Yes. And you're sure about this? No. Lena took a breath. But I'm more sure about this than doing nothing. Another long silence. Then Kael nodded once. We do it your way. But if this goes wrong, it won't, Lena said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. The attack came at dawn on the third day. Lena stood in the main hall of the den, her heart pounding, as the alarm horn sounded. They were here. 50 wolves, maybe more, streaming toward the den from the eastern approach exactly as she'd predicted. Ronan at the front, massive and furious, leading the charge. The den looked vulnerable. Only a handful of guards visible, the defenses seemingly sparse. It was perfect bait. Lena watched from the upper level as Ronan's forces crashed against the first line of defense, watched as they pushed through, triumph evident in their movements. They thought they were winning. Now, Kael's voice, calm and cold over the communication stones. And the Draven wolves struck. From the sides. From hidden positions. From places Ronan hadn't scouted because he'd been too focused on the obvious target. The battle turned in seconds. Ronan's wolves found themselves surrounded, outnumbered, their momentum shattered. Lena watched it unfold with a mix of horror and relief. This was war. This was violence. But it was controlled, strategic, and it was working. She saw the moment Ronan realized he'd been outplayed, saw his expression shift from confidence to fury to something that might have been respect. He was searching the battlefield, and she knew who he was looking for. Her. Lena stepped back from the window, her pulse racing. The fight raged for another 20 minutes before Ronan finally called the retreat. His forces fell back in disarray, leaving a dozen wounded, but, miracle of miracles, no dead. Kael had given orders to disable, not kill. Mercy, even in battle. When the last enemy wolf had vanished into the forest, a cheer went up from the Draven pack. They'd won. They'd actually won. Lena's knees went weak with relief. Kael found her moments later, blood on his clothes but unhurt, his eyes blazing with fierce pride. Your plan worked, he said. Our plan worked, Lena corrected. Don't be modest. Kael pulled her into his arms, heedless of the blood and dirt. You outthought an alpha with 20 years of combat experience. I don't even have words. Lena buried her face in his chest, breathing him in. Is everyone okay? Minor injuries, nothing serious. His hand came up to cradle the back of her head. You saved us, Lena. You understand that? You saved us all. Wolves were gathering now, crowding into the hall, faces flushed with victory. And they were looking at her. Not with suspicion, not with doubt. With respect. Elara pushed through the crowd, her expression almost warm. I think we can drop the probationary status now. What do you say, Council? A chorus of agreement. Marcus was the last to speak, his voice gruff but genuine. Welcome to Draven Pack, Lena. Full member. Something broke open in Lena's chest, relief and joy and belonging all mixed together. She'd done it. She'd earned her place. She'd proven she was more than just a scared Omega who needed protecting. Kael's arm tightened around her waist, and when she looked up at him, the love in his eyes made her breath catch. Told you, he murmured. You're going to change everything. And looking around at the wolves who'd finally accepted her, at the den that had become home, at the future stretching bright and uncertain ahead, Lena thought maybe, just maybe, he was right. And looking around at the wolves who'd finally accepted her, at the den that had become home, at the future stretching bright and uncertain ahead, Lena thought maybe, just maybe, he was right. The celebration lasted through the night. Wolves who'd fought together now drank together, sharing stories of near misses and perfect strikes. Someone started singing, and soon the great hall was filled with voices raised in victory songs that had been passed down through generations. Lena sat near the fire, watching it all with a strange sense of disconnect. She'd done this. Her plan. Her strategy. And it had worked. But the weight of it was starting to settle on her shoulders. The responsibility, the realization that wolves had trusted her with their lives, and she'd gambled and won. This time. "You're thinking too much," Nessa said, dropping down beside her with 2 cups of mead. She pressed one into Lena's hands. "Drink. Celebrate. You earned it. People could have died. People always could die. That's what happens in war." Nessa took a long drink. "But they didn't. Because you were smart. So stop torturing yourself and accept the win." Lena sipped the mead. It was sweet and burned going down. "Is it always like this? The fighting? Sometimes worse. Sometimes better." Nessa studied her. "You thinking you made a mistake coming here?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. "I'm thinking I've never felt this alive before." Nessa's smile was slow and approving. "Good. Because Kael's been staring at you like you hung the moon for the last hour, and if you try to leave now, he might actually lose it." Lena glanced across the hall and found Kael immediately. He was talking to Marcus and Alara, but his gaze kept drifting to her, something possessive and warm in his expression. When their eyes met, he smiled. And Lena felt it again, that pull, that bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "I'm not going anywhere," she said quietly. "Didn't think so." Nessa raised her cup. "To new beginnings and old enemies running scared." Lena clinked her cup against Nessa's. "To new beginnings. Osam." 3 days later, the messenger arrived. Lena was in the training yard watching the younger wolves spar when the commotion started. Wolves converged on the main gate, voices rising in alarm. She ran, her heart in her throat, expecting another attack. Instead, she found a single wolf, young, maybe 19, with Ashford markings and fear written all over his face. Kael had him surrounded, a dozen Draven wolves with weapons drawn. "I'm not here to fight," the kid was saying, his hands raised. "I have a message from Alpha Ronan." Lena pushed through the crowd. "Let him speak." Kael's jaw tightened, but he gestured for his wolves to lower their weapons. The messenger swallowed hard and pulled a sealed envelope from his jacket. "Alpha Ronan requests a meeting, neutral ground, just you and him. He says—" The kid's voice wavered. "He says it's time to end this." Silence fell like a stone. "It's a trap," Marcus said immediately. "Of course it's a trap," Nessa agreed, but Lena was staring at the envelope, her mind racing. "When?" "Tomorrow, dawn, the clearing by the old oak halfway between territories. The traditional meeting ground, neutral territory, witnessed by the forest itself." "Absolutely not," Kael said, his voice flat and final. "You're not going." "He's asking for me specifically." "I don't care." Kael turned to face her, and the fear in his eyes was raw. "Ronan's lost half his pack because of you. He's humiliated, desperate. If you go out there alone, he'll kill you." "Maybe." Lena took the envelope, broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Ronan's handwriting. "You've taken everything from me. The least you can do is face me one last time. Come alone, or don't come at all. But know that if you hide behind Draven's walls, this war will never end. How many more wolves have to die for your pride?" The words hit like acid. "He's trying to manipulate you," Kael said, reading over her shoulder. "I know." Lena folded the letter carefully. "But he's also right. This won't end until we face each other. Then I'll go with you. He'll never talk if you're there. You know that." Lena looked up at him, willing him to understand. "This is between me and him. It always has been." "Lena, I have to do this." Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "Not because he's asking, because it's the right thing to do." Kael stared at her for a long moment, a dozen emotions warring on his face. "If I let you do this," he said finally, voice low, "and something happens to you, I will raze Ashford territory to the ground. Do you understand me? I understand. That's not going to stop me from going. Lena stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat. But I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that I can handle this. I trust you. Kale's hand came up to cup her face. It's him I don't trust. Then trust that I'm not stupid enough to go in without a plan. What plan? Lena smiled, though it felt shaky. I'll figure that out tonight. She didn't sleep. Instead, she sat in Kale's room with maps and notes spread around her, thinking through every possible scenario. Every way this could go wrong. Every contingency. Kale watched from the doorway, arms crossed, his expression dark. You don't have to do this, he said for the 10th time. Yes, I do. Why? What do you think is going to happen? That you'll talk to him and he'll suddenly see the error of his ways? No. Lena sat back, rubbing her eyes. I think he's going to try to kill me, or capture me, or hurt me badly enough that you lose control and attack, giving him justification for an all-out war. Kyle went very still. Then why? Because if I don't go, he'll paint me as a coward. He'll use it to rally what's left of his pack, to recruit allies, to make this conflict drag on for months or years. Lena met his gaze. But if I go, if I face him and survive, I take away his power. I show everyone, both packs, that I'm not afraid of him anymore. And if you don't survive? The question hung in the air, heavy and terrible. Then you finish what I started, Lena said quietly. You protect the wolves who defected. You build something better than what Ronan had. You prove that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty. Kyle crossed to her in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, his face buried in her hair. I can't lose you, he said, his voice muffled. I only just found you. You're not going to lose me. Lena held him tight, breathing in his scent. I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. Then believe in me instead. Kyle pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes searching hers. I do believe in you, he said finally. That's what terrifies me. Dawn came too fast. Lena dressed in simple clothes, sturdy jeans, boots, a jacket that wouldn't restrict movement. No weapons. Ronan had specified she come unarmed, and showing up with a knife would only give him an excuse. Kyle insisted on walking her to the boundary line. Half the pack came with them, a silent escort that felt more like a funeral procession than a send-off. When they reached the edge of Draven territory, Kyle stopped. Last chance to change your mind, he said. I'm not changing my mind. Then take this. He pressed something small and cold into her hand, a whistle carved from bone. If anything goes wrong, blow it. I'll hear it, and I'll come. Lena closed her fingers around it. Thank you. Kyle pulled her into one last kiss, desperate and fierce and tasting like goodbye. When he finally let her go, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Come back to me, he whispered, always. And then she turned and walked into the forest alone. The clearing was exactly as she remembered, a wide-open space ringed by ancient oaks, their branches bare and skeletal against the pale morning sky. Snow covered the ground in a thick blanket, pristine and unmarked. Ronan was already there. He stood in the center of the clearing, hands loose at his sides, his expression unreadable. He looked older than Lena remembered, or maybe just more tired. There were new lines around his eyes, new gray in his hair. Leading a failing pack was aging him. You came, he said as she approached. You asked. Lena stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to run if needed. So here I am. Ronan studied her for a long moment. You look different. I am different. Draven's changed you. No. Lena met his gaze steadily. Leaving you changed me. Draven just gave me room to grow. Something flickered in Ronan's expression, anger maybe, or pain. You destroyed my pack, he said quietly. You destroyed your pack, Lena corrected. I just gave your wolves a choice. They made it. By turning them against me, by showing them there was another way. Lena's voice was calm but firm. You ruled through fear and violence, Ronan. You punished anyone who questioned you. You threw me out for trying to keep you safe. What did you think would happen when your wolves saw that they didn't have to accept that anymore? Ronan's hands curled into fists. I gave them strength, protection, purpose. You gave them a hierarchy where anyone below you was disposable. Lena took a step forward. And when that stopped working, when wolves started dying because you were too proud to listen to warnings, they left. Not because I recruited them, because they wanted to survive. Survival, Ronan spat the word like a curse. Is that what you call it? Running to another alpha? Spreading your legs for… Careful! The word came out cold, sharp as a blade. You don't get to talk about my choices anymore. You lost that right when you hit me. Ronan's face went red. You have no idea what it's like. Leading a pack. Making impossible decisions. Carrying the weight of everyone's lives on your shoulders. You're right. I don't know what it's like to be alpha. Lena's gaze didn't waver. But I know what it's like to watch someone I respected become someone I feared. I know what it's like to be silenced and dismissed and hurt by someone who was supposed to protect me. And I know that a real leader doesn't need to make people afraid to make them follow. You think Kyle's different? Ronan's laugh was bitter. You think he's some kind of savior? He's just as ruthless as I am, just as willing to kill. The difference is he listens, Lena said quietly. He values intelligence over brute force. He gives his wolves agency. And when he's wrong, he admits it. You're naive if you think that makes him better. I think it makes him a leader people want to follow instead of one they're afraid to leave. Lena tilted her head. How many wolves do you have left, Ronan? 15? 10? How long before they all realize what your defectors already know? That loyalty means nothing to you unless it serves your pride. Ronan's jaw worked. For a moment, Lena thought he might attack, but then his shoulders sagged. Why did you really come here? He asked, his voice rough. To gloat. To rub my face in how far I've fallen? No. Lena took a breath. I came to offer you a choice. The same choice you should have offered me. Ronan's eyes narrowed. What choice? Walk away. Lena's voice was steady. Stop this war before more wolves die. Let go of your pride and your anger and your need for revenge. Take what's left of your pack and rebuild somewhere else. Start over. You want me to run? I want you to survive. Lena stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes. You can't win this, Ronan. Even if you kill me right now, Kyle will destroy you. Your allies will abandon you. Your pack will fall apart. This ends one way if you keep fighting, with you dead or exiled, and Ashford territory absorbed into Draven. So I should just give up everything I built. You should save what you have left before you lose it all. Lena's voice softened. You were my alpha once. I respected you once, and part of me still doesn't want to see you die for something as pointless as pride. So I'm asking, begging you to stop, please. Ronan stared at her, and for a moment she saw something crack in his expression, something vulnerable and lost. And if I refuse? He asked quietly. Then Kyle and I will do whatever it takes to protect our pack, and you'll lose. You sound so sure. I am sure. Lena met his gaze. Because I've already beaten you, Ronan. Not with strength, not with violence, but by proving that the wolves you thought were weak, the Omegas, the ones who questioned, the ones who wanted something better, are stronger than you ever gave them credit for. Silence fell between them, broken only by the whisper of wind through bare branches. Ronan looked away first. I can't just walk away, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. They'll see it as weakness. They'll see it as wisdom, as choosing life over death. Lena paused. And honestly, after everything that's happened, does it matter what they think? You've already lost their loyalty, but you haven't lost your life. Not yet. Ronan was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. You really think Kyle will let me go? Just let me walk away? If I ask him to, yes. Why would you do that? Because unlike you, I don't believe in punishing people for choosing to survive. Lena held out her hand. So what's it going to be? Do we end this here, peacefully, or do we keep fighting until there's nothing left? Ronan stared at her outstretched hand, and then, slowly, he took it. His grip was firm but not crushing. A handshake between equals, not alpha and omega. I'll take my wolves and go north, he said quietly. There's unclaimed territory past the mountains. We'll rebuild there. Relief flooded through Lena so hard her knees nearly buckled. Thank you. Don't thank me. Ronan released her hand, his expression bitter. You won. I lost. That's all there is to it. It doesn't have to be about winning and losing. It always is. Ronan turned away. But for what it's worth, you were right. About the Northern Territory, about everything. I should have listened. Yeah, Lena said softly. You should have. Ronan walked toward the edge of the clearing, then paused. Be careful with Kael, he said without looking back. Alphas like him. We don't know how to be gentle with the things we love. Eventually, he'll hurt you. Maybe not on purpose, but he will. Maybe, Lena said, or maybe he'll surprise you, the way I surprised you. Ronan's shoulders stiffened. Then he shifted and loped into the forest, disappearing between the trees. Lena stood alone in the clearing, her heart pounding, hardly able to believe what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd ended the war. Not with violence, not with bloodshed, with words, with choices, with the power she'd found in herself. The whistle was still clutched in her hand, unused. She smiled and started walking back toward Draven territory. Kale met her at the boundary line, his face pale, his eyes wild. What happened? I heard nothing. I thought... He grabbed her shoulders, scanning her for injuries. Are you hurt? Did he... I'm fine. Lena caught his hand, squeezing. It's over. He's leaving. Kael froze. What? He's taking what's left of his pack and going north, rebuilding somewhere else. The war's over, Kael. We won. For a moment, Kael just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. You're insane, he muttered against her hair. Completely insane. You already knew that. I thought he was going to kill you. I know. Lena pulled back to look at him. But I had to try. Had to give him a chance to walk away. And he took it. Because of you. Kael's voice was rough with emotion. Because you're brave and stubborn and too smart for your own good. Someone has to be. Kael laughed, the sound breaking and relieved. You saved us. Again. We saved each other. Lena touched his face, tracing the scar through his eyebrow. That's what partners do. Something fierce and possessive flared in Kael's eyes. Partners. Unless you have a better word for it, I have several. Kael's smile was slow and devastating. But we can discuss those later. Right now, I need to bring you back to the den before my wolves think I've lost you. They walked back together, hands linked, and Lena felt the weight that had been pressing on her chest for weeks finally lift. It was done. The fighting, the fear, the constant looking over her shoulder. Done. Shemmed. The celebration that night made the previous one look tame. When word spread that Ronan had agreed to leave, that the war was over without a single additional casualty, the pack erupted in joy. Wolves who'd been tense and battle-ready for weeks finally relaxed. The defectors wept with relief. Even the council members who'd been skeptical of Lena smiled. Elara found her near the fire and pulled her aside. What you did today, the older woman said quietly, was extraordinary. You gave an enemy a chance to surrender with honor. That takes strength most wolves don't have. I just didn't want more people to die, Lena said, which is exactly why you're going to be a great leader someday. Alara's gaze was knowing. You lead with compassion. That's rare in our world. I'm not trying to lead. You already are. Elara gestured to the hall, where wolves were laughing and drinking and celebrating. Half the pack came to Draven because of you. They followed your example, trusted your judgment. That's leadership, whether you claim the title or not. Lena looked around the hall and saw it. Wolves who'd been strangers a month ago, now talking like family. Defectors sitting with longtime Draven members, sharing stories. Barriers breaking down. I just wanted to help, she said quietly. You did more than help. You changed us. Elara squeezed her shoulder once, then walked away. Lena stood there, feeling the weight and wonder of it. She'd changed things. Not by being stronger, not by being more dominant, by being herself, by trusting her instincts, by refusing to accept that the only way forward was through violence. There you are. She turned to find Kael approaching, 2 cups of wine in his hands. He offered her one and pulled her close when she took it. You okay? He asked. Better than okay. Lena leaned into him. I'm happy. Good. Kael pressed a kiss to her temple. You deserve to be. They stood like that for a while, wrapped in each other, watching their pack celebrate. Then Kael pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. I need to ask you something, he said. Lena's stomach fluttered. Okay. These past few weeks, you've changed everything about how this pack operates. You've brought in new wolves, new ideas, new ways of thinking. Kael took her free hand, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. And I don't want to go back to the way things were before you came. I don't want to lead alone anymore. Lena's heart started pounding. Kael, let me finish. His gaze was intense, burning. I want you beside me. Not as my mate, though you are that. Not as someone I'm protecting, though I'll always protect you. But as my equal, my partner, my co-alpha. The words hit Lena like a tidal wave. You want me to be alpha? She whispered. I want us to lead together. Kael's voice was steady, certain. You've already proven you can do it. The pack respects you, trusts you, and I... His voice caught. I can't imagine doing this without you. Lena stared at him, her mind reeling. Co-alpha, equal leadership, everything she'd never allowed herself to dream of. I'm Omega, she said, the objection automatic. You're the strongest wolf I've ever met, Kael countered. And strength has nothing to do with designation. You've proven that over and over. What about the pack? What about tradition? Tradition can change. We'll make it change. Kael's hands tightened on hers. Say yes, Lena. Help me build something new, something better. Lena looked around the hall again, at the wolves celebrating, at the defectors who'd risked everything for a chance at something different, at the future spreading out before them, bright and terrifying and full of possibility. She thought about the Omega she'd been a month ago, silent, invisible, convinced her voice didn't matter, and she thought about who she'd become, someone who spoke up, who fought back, who refused to accept that weakness was her destiny. Yes, she said, the word coming out stronger than she expected. Yes, I'll do it. Kael's smile was blinding. He set down their cups and pulled her into a kiss that made the whole hall fade away. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, Kael turned to face the pack. Everyone! His voice cut through the noise, commanding attention. I have an announcement. The hall quieted, wolves turning to look. Kael pulled Lena close to his side, his arm around her waist. As of tonight, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, Lena Virel is no longer just a member of this pack. She's my co-alpha, my equal. And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with both of us. Silence fell. Lena held her breath, waiting for objections, for protests, for someone to say this was wrong, impossible, against every tradition they knew. Instead, Ilara stood. All in favor, Tim? She called out. A roar of approval shook the rafters. Wolves cheered, stomped, raised their cups in salute. Even Marcus, who'd been skeptical from the start, was nodding with something like respect. No one objected. No one challenged. They accepted her. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. She tried to blink them back, but one escaped anyway, tracking down her cheek. Kael wiped it away with his thumb, his expression soft. Welcome to the hardest job you'll ever love, he murmured. Lena laughed, the sound watery but genuine. I can't believe I just agreed to this. Too late to back out now. I wouldn't, even if I could. The next morning, Lena stood on the upper walkway of the den, looking out over Draven territory as the sun rose. The forest was beautiful in the early light, snow-covered and peaceful, the trees stark against a sky streaked with pink and gold. It looked different now, not like enemy territory or a place to survive, like home. Footsteps behind her. Kael appeared at her side, 2 cups of tea in his hands. He passed her one without a word. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the day begin. You know this is going to be hard, Kael said eventually. Leading together. There will be fights, disagreements, times when we can't agree on the right path. I know. And some wolves will always see you as Omega first, Alpha second. They'll question your decisions, test your authority. I know that too. Kael glanced at her. And you're okay with it? Lena thought about everything she'd been through, the exile, the fear, the moments of doubt and pain and terror. And she thought about what she'd gained, strength, purpose, a voice that mattered, love. I spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough, she said quietly, that my instincts didn't matter, that I should stay quiet and let stronger wolves make decisions. And I believed it for so long that I forgot I had a choice. She turned to face Kael, meeting his gaze steadily. But I'm done being quiet, done accepting that my worth is tied to my designation, done letting anyone, including myself, tell me I can't do something. She smiled. So yeah, I'm okay with it, because even on the hardest days, this is still better than being invisible. Kael stared at her, something fierce and proud blazing in his eyes. I love you, he said, the words simple but weighted with certainty. Lena's breath caught. I love you too. He pulled her into his arms and she went willingly, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. We're going to change everything, Kael murmured against her hair. We already have, Lena replied. And standing there, wrapped in warmth and safety and the promise of a future they'd build together, Lena finally understood what power really meant. It wasn't about strength or dominance or forcing others to submit. It was about knowing your worth, speaking your truth, making choices that honored both courage and compassion. It was about proving that leadership came in many forms, and that sometimes the quietest voice in the room was the one most worth hearing. She'd started this journey as a dismissed Omega with no pack and no power. She was ending it as co-alpha of one of the strongest packs in the territory, with a mate who valued her mind as much as her heart, and a future limited only by her own imagination. She'd survived the forest, survived exile, survived war. And in surviving, she'd discovered something more important than mere endurance. She'd discovered who she was meant to be. Not weak, not invisible, not powerless, strong, seen, capable of changing the world. And as the sun rose higher, painting the snow in shades of gold, and the pack below began to stir and wake to a new day, Lena smiled. Because this, all of this, was just the beginning. The forest had tested her. She'd proven herself. And now, standing beside the alpha who'd seen her worth when no one else had, leading wolves who'd chosen to follow, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, Lena finally felt like she'd come home. Not to a place, but to herself. And that was the greatest victory of all. Lena stood there a moment longer, breathing in the cold morning air, feeling the weight of her new title settle on her shoulders like a cloak. Co-alpha. The word still felt foreign. Impossible, even. But when she looked down at the den below, saw wolves emerging from their quarters, saw Garrett talking with one of the senior Draven members without tension, saw the defectors moving freely among their new packmates, she knew it was real. What are you thinking about? Kael asked, his voice rumbling through his chest where her head still rested. How fast everything changed. Lena pulled back to look at him. A month ago, I was nobody. Now I'm supposed to help lead an entire pack. It's terrifying? Yeah. Good. Kael's smile was crooked. The day you stop being scared is the day you stop being careful. And we need you careful. Movement caught Lena's eye, Nessa climbing the stairs toward them, her expression urgent. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but we've got a situation. Lena's stomach tightened. What kind of situation? The kind where 3 packs from the Eastern Territories just sent messengers asking for a meeting, with both of you. Nessa's gaze flicked between them. Word spreading fast about what happened here, about Ronan's retreat, about the Omega who became co-alpha. Kael's expression hardened. They want to see if we're weak, or if we're a threat, Nessa countered. Either way, they're coming, day after tomorrow. And they're expecting answers about how we plan to maintain order in the region now that Ashford's effectively dissolved. Lena felt Kael tense beside her, saw the calculations running behind his eyes. This was alpha business, politics, territory disputes, the delicate balance of power that kept the packs from tearing each other apart. The old Lena would have stepped back, would have let Kael handle it. But she wasn't that Lena anymore. Then we give them answers, she said, her voice steady. We show them that Draven Pack isn't just strong. We're smart, strategic, and we don't bow to pressure. Nessa's eyebrows rose. You want to meet with them? I want to show them that things have changed. Lena looked at Kael. Not just here, everywhere. That leadership doesn't have to mean brutality. That even Omega wolves can stand eye to eye with alphas and not blink. A slow smile spread across Kael's face. You're going to make them very uncomfortable. Good. Nessa laughed, the sound sharp with approval. I'll let them know you'll receive them. Fair warning, though. These are old-school alphas. They're not going to like being told how things are by someone they see as beneath them. Then they'll learn, Lena said simply. Or they'll leave. Either way, I'm done pretending to be less than I am to make other people comfortable. Nessa's grin widened. Oh, I like you. I really, really like you. She sketched a mock salute and headed back down the stairs. When she was gone, Kael pulled Lena close again, his expression serious. You know they're going to test you, he said quietly. Push boundaries. Try to undermine you in front of their own wolves to prove that an Omega Co-Alpha is just Draven being soft. Let them try. Lena's jaw set. I've faced down Ronan twice and survived. I think I can handle some posturing alphas. I don't doubt that. Kael tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm just warning you, this is different from fighting off an attack. This is politics. Words as weapons. Alliances that shift like sand. Then teach me. Lena met his gaze. I'm not expecting to know everything overnight, but I'm a fast learner. And I have you. You do. Kael's voice softened. Always. They stood there as the sun climbed higher, warming the frozen landscape, and Lena felt something shift inside her, not fear exactly, but anticipation. A month ago, she'd been running for her life. Now she was preparing to face down territorial alphas as an equal. The irony wasn't lost on her. What are you smiling about? Kael asked. Just thinking about how much Ronan would hate this. Lena's smile widened. The Omega he threw away is now co-alpha of his rival pack. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. Kael laughed, the sound rich and warm. He's probably somewhere north right now, regretting every decision he made. Good. Lena's expression sobered. Maybe it'll make him a better leader to whoever stays with him. You're too forgiving. No, I'm just done carrying anger that doesn't serve me. Lena turned in his arms to face the rising sun. Ronan made his choices. I made mine. And I got the better end of the deal. Kael's arms tightened around her waist. So did I. Below them, the den was coming fully alive now. Wolves gathering for morning training, others heading out on patrol, the rhythms of pack life flowing like a river that had been running since before Lena was born. But there was something different in the air today. Something lighter. Hope, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. Either way, it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. Come on, Kael said, pressing a kiss to her neck. We've got a pack to run. And apparently, visitors to prepare for. And a new order to build, Lena added. That too. They walked down together, hands linked, stepping into the future they'd fought so hard to claim. And as they passed through the corridors of the den, wolves nodded in respect, not just to Kael, but to her. Equal, recognized, valued. Lena Varel had come to Draven territory as a refugee with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of fear. She was staying as co-alpha, with a pack that chose her, a mate who loved her, and a voice that would never be silenced again. The forest had tried to break her. Instead, it had forged her into something stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. And this was only the beginning, because the Omega who'd been dismissed and discarded had just proven something that would echo through every pack in the territory. True power didn't come from dominance. It came from the courage to be yourself, even when the world told you that you weren't enough. And Lena was more than enough. She always had been. She just needed the right pack and the right alpha to help her see it. Now, standing on the threshold of a future bright with possibility, she finally understood what it meant to be home. Not in a place, but in herself. And nothing and no one could take that away from her ever again.